Hi, I'm Gerry with the Cambridge Foodies, and today I'm going to show you my take on baklava. I've divided the ingredients into two sets. We have the syrup on one side. We're just going to add water to these. We have the golden caster sugar. You can use granulated sugar and process it yourself. We have some honey. There's lots of different varieties of honey that you can use for flavour. I've just gone with a very basic one just to show you that you can use any ingredients for this. We have the pastry. Now, some people will like to make their own pastry. With Filo pastry, you have to make about 60 sheets for this recipe. It's time consuming and you'll quite often damage the sheets as you're going. So for consistency and that time saving factor, I do recommend shop bought pre-rolled pastries. I have butter today. Normally I'd use ghee, but unfortunately the local shop didn't have any for me. So we're going with butter today. It won't make that much difference. It'll just be a slightly saltier recipe. And then I have 200 grams of pecans and 200 grams of pistachios that I've chopped up. You can use a blender or food processor for that, but you need a very good quality one as the nuts can damage the mechanism if it's not strong enough. Also, if you blitz it or blend it too much, you can create a paste. You don't want a paste, you want chopped nuts. And I'm just going to use my brush. I have a little pastry brush. I like my pastry brush. It's important to make sure you get all the edges. Because you don't want your baklava to stick. There we go. So most of these will come pre-scored down the middle, but I often find that they're not quite in the middle. But that'll be good enough for us. So we're going to start layering the baklava now. I'm just going to make sure there's plenty. I've already greased it. I do like to make sure there's plenty on the bottom layer. And you're just going to keep building up your layers on your baklava. And then whilst this is baking, we'll just make up the syrup. So you can see I've melted the butter a little bit better now. Butter does perform slightly differently to the ghee that I'm used to. So I do strongly recommend that you use ghee rather than butter for flavour, and I find that the ghee melts better and stays as a liquid for longer, making it slightly easier to butter these layers up. We're on to the last sheet now before we go on to our nut mix. So that's going to be the base layer that the nuts go onto. By using 2 packs of Filo pastry, it makes it quite easy to know when you're halfway through your sheets. As you see, I've opened 1 pack. I'm going to use that for the base. I want plenty of butter or ghee on this layer. There we go, that looks good. So then we're going to go back to our nuts and sweeten them up a bit. So we've layered our pastry. Now we're going to move on to the nut mix. It's very simple. We're just going to add 3 to 4 large spoons of honey. And quite often it's good to use 2 spoons so you can scrape the other one clean. All right, and we're going to add a little bonus bit of honey. There we go. Right, now we're going to mix this together and then we're going to layer it up. Now I have my silicone spatula here as well, just to help me do that. And we're just going to mix that in, and you can see how that's forming up. Where I've got an inconsistent size of the nuts, it's actually good. You'll get micro nuts mixed in with your large chunky nuts, and they will all stick together really well. And then we're going to spread it into that middle layer of our pastry. So we've mixed that to a nice consistency now. I do recommend that you use a larger bowl. So, and now we're just going to add this into the middle mix here. I might have more nuts than I thought I needed. So quite often I don't follow an exact recipe with this. And I quite often find that I'm quite greedy with the nuts. So I often find that you can't have enough. I do have some extra left over on this one. And I feel that that is a good layer. So once you've got your nuts onto the middle layer, you're then moving on to the top layer. Again, this recipe is very simple. It's just a bit long-winded. So this can be quite laborious. Like I said, what I tend to do is get one of my children to help me to break up. But I don't mind doing it. I find it quite therapeutic and relaxing. Last layer. Just going to tip that last bit on. There we go. Yeah, nice. Okay, so that's that done. The next thing we're going to do is to cut it into portions before we bake it. You must cut it before you bake it. You can cut it in different directions as you want. I'm going to keep it very simple. Just going to go. Now I'm with Simon today, as you all know. So we are going to go with big portions. You can cut this down to smaller. Now you can hear it tapping through. You can hear that I've gone all the way through the pastry. Okay, so that's important. You can feel it as you're cutting. There we go. So you will get some bits whilst you're cutting as well where the nuts might get in the way of your knife, because like I say, I do use a chunky mix. But all you're doing is just working through till you're at the bottom. There we go. I can hear and feel that. And then we're just going to work our lines back. And like I say, these are quite chunky portions I'm doing here. I quite often do them a little bit smaller, but that's because I'm greedy. And we are working through, we have a Simon portion, a Gerry portion, and then we've got the kiddie portions on this side here. It doesn't have to be super consistent, but you do want to make sure that you get all the way to the bottom. There we go. Once you've done that, a simple turn. Now it can be harder to cut these bits because you might get a little bit of slip. So what I'll quite often do is use a fork or a second knife just to hold that in place. Okay, so we've finished portioning out our baklava now. Again, you can cut them into smaller pieces if you want, but I think that that's a good, decent, chunky, but I wouldn't want them any bigger. So once you've reached this stage and you've sliced your baklava into portions, like I say, these are quite large portions, we're then just going to put it in the oven at 160 for 20 minutes, and then we'll reduce the heat to 130 for a further 40 minutes. The baklava's in the oven, we are going to make our syrup. The syrup is 200 ml of water. You can add flavoured water, so I quite often will use a rose or an orange water. Again, it's not necessary, that's for flavour and taste. Make the basic recipe a few times and then add in your little twists. So for me, I do like my ground cinnamon, so I'll be using half a teaspoon of ground cinnamon in this recipe. I'll be using 250 grams of caster sugar and 50 grams of honey, and I'll mix them in a saucepan with 200 mils of water, bringing that to a simmer and allowing it to reduce. It'll probably take around 25 minutes in total, just because I like to give it that time to reduce down and make sure the sugar is properly dissolved in there. So the next step is to make the syrup. We're going to start ours with 200 mils of water, 250 grams of caster sugar and 50 grams of honey. We're then going to put them into a saucepan and bring it to a boil. So we've got 250 grams of sugar, and then we're just going to add roughly 50 grams of honey, which I believe is around 2 big spoonfuls. Yeah, there we go, a little bit over, no harm in that. Okay, and then we're simply going to put our water in and then add our honey and sugar. And then that will go onto the heat just to reduce all that down, mix it all together. And you just want it on a nice heat to get it started, and then you reduce it down to a simmer. Once that's started, I'll then add around half a teaspoon of cinnamon. Again, that's just for flavour. Not everyone likes cinnamon. I think it adds a lovely flavour to the baklava. Half a spoon of cinnamon just makes a massive fragrant taste. Because I do think you taste fragrance as much as anything else, don't you? But yeah, everything's fully dissolved now, it's just reducing. Right guys, there we have it, a nice simple easy baklava recipe. I really hope you've enjoyed it. Why not like and subscribe to our channel and join us on our other social medias for all of our input around Cambridge. Thank you.